21 Phrase Origins You Never Knew. Part 1. Ever wondered where everyday phrases like break the ice, spill the beans, or bite the bullet actually come from? Discover the mind-blowing and sometimes hilarious stories behind 21 common phrases we use every day. From ancient Rome to medieval superstitions, these phrase origins reveal the fascinating history hidden in our language. 1. A nest egg. Farmers collecting eggs often leave one to encourage the chickens to continue laying eggs in the same nest. By the 14th century, the phrase nest egg was used in this context. By the sophisticated 17th century, it meant to set aside a sum of money for the future. 2. A pinch of salt. Adito solus grano was first used by Pliny the Elder around AD 77, referring to King Mithridates, the sixth of Pontus, who developed immunity to poisoning by ingesting small, regular doses of poison with a grain of salt to make them more tolerable. Ironically enough, when Mithridates was defeated by the Romans, he drank poison to kill himself, only to discover that this was no longer effective. He ended up stabbing himself instead, while Pliny obviously meant the phrase literally. The English started using a similar expression come grano salis in the Middle Ages. This more modern version implies that, just as adding salt enhances flavor, taking a dubious story with a pinch of salt makes it more digestible. 3. A red letter day. This one has its origins in medieval ecclesiastical calendars, which marked feast days and saints' days in red, while other days were in black. 4. Baker's dozen. The Assize of Bread and Ale of 1262 was a piece of medieval legislation that aimed to stop bakers from selling underweight loaves. To stay on the right side of the law, bakers started to give an extra piece of bread away with every loaf, and a 13th loaf with every dozen. 5. Beyond the pale. While you may think the phrase has to do with one's complexion, the word pale actually originates from the Latin word palum, meaning stake. In English, it initially referred to a fence marking the boundaries of a territory under specific authority, such as a cathedral pale. Over time, this extended to denote the limits of political jurisdiction. The phrase came to be viewed as what was within the pale was considered civilized, while beyond it was seen as barbaric. 5. By hook or by crook. While records of this phase date back to the 14th century, its origins are unclear. One theory attributes it to a medieval law about collecting firewood that allowed peasants to only take what they could cut from dead trees by using their reaper's billhook or a shepherd's crook. 6. Curry favor. Nope, nothing to do with Indian food. Rather, the phrase came from the Middle English words curry favel, which in Old French was a striller foval and translates to rubbing down a chestnut horse. Wait, what? Up? A chestnut horse? The unlikely origins of this phrase lie with Le Roman de Favrel, 14th century French romance that has its characters grooming a chestnut horse in order to win his favor and assistance. The popularity of the work led people to accuse those who tried to further their own ends by flattery to be currying favor. By the 16th century, the play was forgotten, and people changed the phrase to the only slightly more sensical currying favor. 7. Dead as a doornail. Medieval carpenters nailing doornails, which were particularly thick, had a practice of first striking them all the way in, then hammering the head sideways in a way that ensured it couldn't be pulled out or used again. Such a nail was appropriately called a dead nail. The phrase dates back at least to the 14th century, when the words dead as a doornail appear in Middle English poems like The Romance of William of Polarin and William Langland's Piers Plowman. Shakespeare also uses it in Henry IV, Part 2, and if I do not leave you all as dead as a doornail, I pray God I may never eat grass more. Act 4, Scene 10. 8. Dyed in the wool. In medieval times, people applied vegetable dye directly to raw wool, rather than to spun yarn or finished cloth. The goal was to let the dye seep into all the fibers, resulting in a more consistent and durable color in the final cloth. The technique led to the expression dyed in the wool, referring to someone deeply ingrained with a particular characteristic or belief. 9. Get off scot-free. The most likely origin of this phrase comes from medieval England, where peasants had to make to their feudal lords a payment called scotage. However, the poorest peasants would be exempt from this payment, thus going scot-free. Another possibility has it originating from tavern bills, which were also known as scots. In this context, going scot-free meant to have a drinking companion or friend cover the bill. 10. Gibberish. The unpronounceable Abu Musa Jabir ibn Hayyan was a 9th century scholar who wrote about sciences, magic, alchemy, and philosophy. When his Arabic works made their way to Europe, his name was simplified to the rather plainer Geber. However, even if they could now pronounce his name, his writing would be too complex for most readers, leading to a description of his work as gibberish and to a new idiom being born. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for new videos.